Howdy Simmers. Do you ever think about how many Sims games there are? Obviously there's the main 4 Sims games, but then you start thinking about the spin-off games, you start thinking about all the games that were made on console or the mobile games. And that's when you realize that there's a chance you've been missing out on some very interesting Sims content. And as someone who has nothing better to do with her life, I've played most of them. So today I'm going to be ranking every Sims game ever outside of the SimCity games because I've only ever played one SimCity game and it did not go well and it was for school and it's a whole thing. Before we get into this, I do want to stress that this is purely my own opinion. We're all entitled to our opinion, we all feel differently about the games, it's fine. This is just what I think of them. So I've put together this tier list, and the categories are top tier, pleasantly enjoyed, meh, haven't played enough, and never played. And you'll notice I don't really have like a be gone category or anything like that because all of these games have quirks, but I don't hate any of them. None of them I feel should like have never existed. So that's why there's no like get out of here, delete, we don't want you category, because I just don't think any of these games really deserve that. So I've put all the games in order of release, which means we're going to be starting at the very beginning with the original Sims game, The Sims. The Sims came out in the year 2000, marking the beginning of the Sims franchise. But while the basis of the game remained the same throughout the rest of the main series, there are some drastic differences. I think the most notable difference is the art style. Unlike other Sims games, The Sims 1 had a top-down style to it, so you could only look at your Sims from specific angles. You couldn't really get up close and personal with them. There also wasn't a genetic system in the game, and customization of your Sims was very limited. So we couldn't make any facial adjustments or body adjustments whatsoever. Instead, we had these like pre-made heads and pre-made bodies, and this was how we made our Sims. It was very different back then, and I am forever grateful that the Sims became more customizable over time and that we didn't have to pick from pre-mades all the time, because I don't think I could deal with making the same Sims over and over and over again because of how limited we are in our choices of what our Sims look like. I do love the randomness of the original Sims game, and I'm absolutely obsessed with the soundtrack of the first Sims game, but with the limitations in terms of customization, it makes it kind of hard for me to really feel connected to my Sims because I didn't spend hours on end trying to create the perfect Sim. So for me, I'm putting it in meh because it was the very beginning of the Sims franchise, and while it was a good start, I do know that over time the Sims franchise got better and it was improved upon, and so for me, the original Sims is meh in comparison to the other games. Next up is The Sims Online, which I have actually never played. The Sims Online released in 2002, and it was similar to the original Sims in terms of art style, but it was a social platform. You could go online, talk to complete strangers, maybe even your friends if, you know, they played the game too and you could find them. But overall, it is a very similar game to the original Sims because it had only come out a few years later. I believe the game officially closed down in 2008. I've also seen some things about the server actually shutting down in 2011. I don't know which one is correct, but basically this no longer exists. There was kind of a rewritten version called Freeso for a while, and I don't know if that is still around, unfortunately. It might be. You can look for it if you want, but the original Sims Online is no longer around. Now, obviously, because I never played it or Freeso, I don't really have an opinion about The Sims Online, but I do think that had I been able to play it, I would have really enjoyed it because I am a very, I don't know, not a social person, but I have been on a lot of websites where I get to be social, and those have always been some of my favorite games. I'm talking like Pixie Hollow Online, Movie Star Planet, those kind of games, and even Club Penguin, even though I didn't really get to play it. But I think I would have really enjoyed The Sims Online had I had it available to me. The next game is The Sims Bustin' Out, and this was actually the first Sims game that was not released on Windows. It was exclusive to a variety of consoles. I had the PlayStation 2 version, and honestly, this game is kind of interesting because it's the first game that actually has kind of a storyline to it, and that storyline is basically take down Malcolm Landcrab. The game came out before The Sims 2, which means this was actually the first Sims game that allowed you to get really close to your Sims, like all up in their business. You could zoom in on them a little bit better. Because it was a console game, it works a little bit differently from how the Windows Sims game works. but overall it is still very interesting, I suppose. The storyline is hilarious to me when you think about the Malcolm Landgrab that we have in The Sims 4, how in this game, Malcolm Landgrab is basically buying up everyone's property, and the whole goal is to basically destroy him, get rich enough so that way you can kick him out of his mansion and your sim can live there. And it's really, really funny to me. And unfortunately, I haven't really played this game enough, but from just the idea of the game, I'm very intrigued. I'm not big on like the actual console games for Sims, but that could just be because I'm more of a PC player than a console player. But for a Sims console game, I think this was a great start. And like I said, I haven't played the game enough, so it's going in the haven't played enough category, which brings us to our next game, The Sims 2. I don't think it should come as a surprise to anyone that I'm gonna put this in top tier. Sims 2 is one of my all-time favorite Sims games. I absolutely love it. The music, the gameplay, the graphic style, for some reason, is just so appealing to me. I love this game. Out of all of the Sims games, I think Sims 2 is the best Sims game ever. And it is just so wacky, so random, and compared to The Sims 1, it was just so life-changing because A, the art style was such a drastic change from the original. It was the first time that you could get really close to your Sims in one of the main Sims games, because obviously you could get really close to them in Bustin' Out. But on Windows, this was the first Sims game that you could really see your Sims, and it was the first time you could actually like give them proper makeovers. Like you could change their hair, you could change their outfits properly. There was still the whole pre-made thing, but you had a few more options than you did in the first one, and even with the pre-mades, when it came to facial features, it introduced the slider function, so you could still make some changes to the facial features of your Sims. And honestly, this game is just so cool. It does have loading screens like The Sims 4 does, but you have cars in The Sims 2. So it's a nice middle ground between The Sims 3 and Sims 4, because yes, you still have a slight open world just with the car system, but then you have the loading screens, which I know is not everyone's favorite thing, and that's totally fine. I actually really like the gameplay of The Sims 2 as well. It definitely kept that randomness that The Sims 1 had, and I absolutely love it. And I think The Sims 2 actually had aliens in the base game, which is very different from The Sims 3 and The Sims 4, because those both came with packs. So I absolutely adore this game. The soundtrack for this game is so good as well. I don't know what it is. I love the early Sims music, but top tier game for me. Absolutely love it. One of the greatest games that has ever come out of the Sims franchise. I just did all of that with my camera in front of the picture. My bad, but my point still stands. The next game is The Urb Sims in the City, and this came out the same year that The Sims 2 did, which is 2004. And this game is something. This is another Sims game that was exclusive to console, and I also had this one on PlayStation 2, and I also have not played this one enough. I swear, with all of the Sims console games, I just have not played them very much. But I don't know what it is. I think Black Eyed Peas was just like really big in 2004, but literally this game is so weird because will.i.am plays such a prominent part in this game. It's really weird. I need to read you the gameplay plot for PS2 because, oh my gosh. So according to good old Wikipedia, the console plot is, in the console version of the game, the protagonist of the story moves from their mother's house to SimCity, where they move into an apartment in the city. In the intro, the protagonist decides to go clubbing. Once the protagonist gets to the club, they're refused entry due to failing at performing a dance move. However, will.i.am of the Black Eyed Peas, along with the other members of the band, arrive at the club and help the protagonist enter. After the intro, a few days later the protagonist goes home and is greeted by Will and his friend Darius, who is the most popular person in SimCity. After showing off their guitar moves, Darius welcomes the protagonist to the city and they leave. Later on, it's discovered that Darius is missing parts from his secret machine. He promises the protagonist that if they find the parts, he will have a special surprise for them. After defeating the villains in the game's districts, the protagonist is asked to come to the penthouse owned by Darius. After arriving at the penthouse, they're greeted by Darius along with the faction bosses from the city districts and are given a key by Darius to the penthouse. Afterwards, Darius leaves the city on his blimp to travel to Minneapolis, the setting of the handheld version of the game. And then the handheld is basically a sequel to Bustin' Out, and the Black Eyed Peas apparently don't appear in the game. But for the console version, which is the one I have, that's the plot. And I am just so thrown off by this. I cannot believe this is an actual Sims game. I will say, while the console versions seem to be very ridiculous, they are very intriguing, and I do like how different they are from the PC games. But some stuff is just so weird. Also, this is what the game looks like. I have not had the best experience with the herbs so far, but I also have not played it that much. So I'm hopeful if I choose to jump back into it, I'll have a little bit better of a time. I think because the herbs has a multiplayer feature to it, I just kind of struggle with that. I don't think that the multiplayer function on the game is very well put together. And so that may be why I've had such a struggle with it. But yeah, this game is just, I haven't played it enough. So there you go. Going into 2007, we're still in the Sims 2 era. And in the Sims 2 era, they released a new series called The Sims Stories. And the first one they released is The Sims Life Stories, which I actually played kind of recently for myself, and I have not played it very much. But this, along with Pet Stories and also Castaway Stories, all kind of follow the same idea. So it's all very story driven. There's very specific things that you have to do in order for you to progress in the story. So these games aren't really my favorite from what I have played of them. They're very unique, and they are the first Windows Sims games that we have that actually have a proper storyline to them. And that makes them very different from the other Sims games, because so far we've only had Sims games that were very like free play, do whatever you want outside of the console games, which were obviously all kind of storyline based. So these brought that storyline element to the Windows Sims games, and they were very intriguing, but they're not my favorite. So both Sims Life Stories and Sims Pet Stories, I haven't played much of either of them, but I feel the same way about them. Now, I'm not going to show you both of these just because both of these games look exactly the same as The Sims 2. And I think The Sims Pet Stories, the only difference between this and Life Stories really, is that this maybe came after The Sims 2 got the Pets expansion. So, honestly, I don't know too much about either of the games, but I really think the only difference is just timing. So these games came out a few months apart. I don't know when The Sims 2 got their Pets expansion, but I can probably bet that this game only exists because they added that DLC to The Sims 2. Otherwise, I don't think that this would have been a separate game. Also in 2007, we got the first ever My Sims game, which I'm including this as a whole series because I have actually never played any of the My Sims games. I really want to, though. The My Sims series has 6 games in total, including My Sims Kingdoms and My Sims Agents. And this game is so freaking cute just from the images. I want to play all of these so bad. Fun fact though, the original My Sims game is actually available on the EA app /Origin, which is really cool. I want to play it so bad. Maybe one day I will. But these games primarily came out on the Nintendo Wii and Nintendo DS. So once again, these are console exclusive games really, but the first one is available on the EA app. I'm not sure how it really functions on PC. I don't imagine it would be that good for PC port, but I've never played it, so I'm not sure. But another fun fact, if you play The Sims 4, the little capsules that your Sims dig up sometimes from collectibles has these little figurines in them of My Sims characters. So it's a little Easter egg for you, hinting back to these games from 2007. and I really want to play these really bad. They look so fun. They look so cute too. 2007 really was a big year for the Sims franchise because we also got The Sims 2 Castaway, which is another spin-off game, and it's also another console exclusive game. Just like the other Sims console games, I haven't played a lot of The Sims 2 Castaway, so I don't entirely know how good of a game it is. I know a lot of people really like The Sims 2 Castaway. The idea of the game is that your sim crashes on Shipwreck Island, and the whole point of the game is to try to survive on the islands, find your crew, survive together, and find a way to get off the islands basically and go home. So it's another one of those like storyline objective type of games. Not a lot of freedom from my understanding. There may be like a free play mode for it, but usually with the console games there is a specific storyline to follow, and Castaway is really no different in that it is primarily a storyline type of game. But I haven't really played it a lot, so yeah. And of course the graphics are still similar to The Sims 2 because it is The Sims 2 Castaway. We are still in the Sims 2 era. But also in this game, there are monkeys, which is a huge plus because monkeys are adorable, and who doesn't love monkeys? So if you love monkeys, you will probably enjoy this game. And then we have the final game in the Sims Story series, and that is The Sims 2 Castaway Stories. Castaway Stories is the only game in the Sims Story series that I have actually never played, and I wasn't really sure what the difference between Castaway and Castaway Stories was, but apparently Castaway Stories was the Windows equivalent of The Sims 2 Castaway because Castaway is console exclusive, but also some of the major differences between Castaway and Castaway Stories is that in Castaway Stories there's actually aging, and your Sims in Castaway Stories can have kids, which is something that you apparently could not do in The Sims 2 Castaway. Had no clue. The Sims 2 Castaway Stories has the same UI as Sims 2 and the other Sim Story games, but it takes place on the island just like Castaway does. So really there's not too many differences between the games. It still takes place in the same thing, just you can do more with your sim and the UI is a little bit different. But other than that, there's not really any differences that I'm aware of, at least. I don't know. I've never played this game. The Sims 2 era officially came to an end in 2009 when we got The Sims 3. Everyone knows The Sims 3. Everyone loves The Sims 3. It's got open world, the color wheel, cars, create a style, create a world. It's amazing. It's everything that you want a Sims game to be, etc, etc. I have been dreading getting to this part of the video because I know so many people are gonna get mad at me for my placement of this. Just remember, this is just my opinion. You have your opinions, you're entitled to your opinions, I'm entitled to mine. Just remember that when I put this game down on the chart.
No.
Now hear me out. I acknowledge that The Sims 3 is a good game, especially compared to the other Sims games, but even you can't deny that The Sims 3 does have its quirks as well. A lot of people who really like The Sims 3 tend to treat this game like it's a god. They're constantly praising it, always saying it is the best game of all time and that there's really nothing wrong with it. But have you forgotten how laggy the game is? Like, I see so many reports from people about how the game is just so laggy, the game is very ugly, which I agree it is very ugly. I also believe that there's some kind of issue with The Sims 3 Island Paradise, where like the game crashes or something, or it freezes. It's also not recommended that you play the game with every pack installed. So I think that should say something. Like, the game can't handle all of the content that's being produced for it. I don't see that as a good thing. Obviously, a lot of those really big features are what causes the game to be so laggy. I think Create a Style has like the biggest issue with it because the game has to process what you've made, then also process what that design is going onto, whether it's a couch or a table or maybe even a car. I don't know what the extent of that feature is. But for me, the biggest issue has always been the art style of the game. Sims 3 very much shifted the style when it went into this more like alpha type style, tried to make everything look more realistic, and I just don't really like the way it looks. It's kind of the same way that like I don't like alpha custom content in The Sims 4 because I just don't really like the realistic style in general. It obviously doesn't suit The Sims 4. Like, it's definitely better suited in The Sims 3 because the entire game looks more on the realistic side. But I don't like the realistic art style. It's just not for me. The hairstyles have never been the best. I definitely would rely on custom content for that. But overall, just the game, no matter what my graphic settings are at, I just don't really like. And kind of the other reason I'm not big on this game is that because I started off with The Sims 4, I'm used to there not really being a lot happening, but with The Sims 3, because it's open world, there's always stuff happening, and it's always happening all around the world, and I can see it whenever I want. But because of that, I get so overwhelmed when I play the game because there's just so much happening constantly. And I think that's really what kind of turns me off from this game, is that I just get too overwhelmed from playing it. My brain hurts, it's just too much for me. I'm a little bit scared that I'm gonna get hate for that, but like I said, it's my opinion, and we're all entitled to our opinions. I still think that The Sims 3 is a good game. It's just not my favorite game in the franchise, and there are things that I don't like about it. So just understand, you are more than welcome to absolutely love The Sims 3, but it is not my favorite game. Anyway, a few years later, it is 2011, and we get our next Sims spin-off game, which is actually not a console game. It is The Sims Medieval. I have had so much fun with The Sims Medieval, and while the graphics are similar to The Sims 3, they are a little bit more cleaned up. I like them a bit better than The Sims 3. I won't say that the graphic style is like game-changing or anything compared to The Sims 3 because they are very similar, but I can tolerate the graphics of Sims Medieval a little bit more. But I have absolutely enjoyed this game. The only issue I've ever really had with The Sims Medieval is that it makes my computer really hot. But I enjoy the game so much, so it's going in pleasantly enjoyed. It is definitely one of the top Sims games in my opinion. Like, I don't think I have ever loved a Sims spin-off game as much as I love The Sims Medieval. It is so different. It is so incredibly fun. You can play as all sorts of different characters with different roles in the kingdom, and they have quest lines which you can follow, but you can also just like focus on having your Sims do like daily quests or not daily quests, but daily tasks, and making them have families and such, which I haven't really done for myself. I've very much just been following the storylines and the quest lines that have been given to me. But I don't know, maybe it's just like I love this time period so much, but something about Sims Medieval just makes me so happy. I think I just really like stuff about the medieval times. I don't know, but this game, so good, so fun. I think you can tell in this picture that the graphics from The Sims 3 and Sims Medieval are slightly different. It does have still kind of that realistic style, but it looks more neat, I think. But this is one of my favorite things from the game, actually, is this little, like, monster thing in the game. But this has truly been one of the better Sims game experiences that I have ever had. It did have, like, one DLC, which was the Pirates and Nobles DLC, and I don't actually know what the game was like before it, because the version I got included the DLC, so I've never really experienced the game without Pirates and Nobles. But this is just so funny. The quest lines are so interesting and can have some very hilarious results. But there's just so much that your Sims can do, and especially depending on the role that you're playing as, you get some very unique quest lines. One of the quests that I had, I was playing as the doctor in the kingdom, and we had to try to figure out and get rid of the plague. And so my doctor character ended up figuring out who the person who brought the plague was, and we ended up getting married to them. So great outcome, I think. One of the best decisions I have ever made. I love this game, and I think for anyone who really likes old-timey kind of settings in games, Sims Medieval is probably right up your alley. It is such a good game. I definitely think it is a very underrated masterpiece. So fun. Highly recommend. And then later in 2011, we got The Sims Social, which was basically the Facebook equivalent of The Sims Online. Unfortunately, The Sims Social wasn't very popular, so it ended up closing in 2013, and I wasn't on Facebook at that time, so I have actually never played The Sims Social. When I did find out it was a thing, I got super excited and I really wanted to play it, so I was really devastated when I found out that it wasn't a thing anymore. I will say I use the term equivalent loosely because The Sims Social and The Sims Online look very, very different from each other. Obviously, it was different time periods. Sims Online was during the days of The Sims 1, so it was still like early graphics. This one definitely went for a more 2D cartoony look, I think. So it's definitely a different style from The Sims Online. Definitely looks a little bit like simpler UI, although that's just how Facebook games were, so I think this is more just trying to suit the style of what other Facebook games looked like, and that's why it looks so simple and looks so different. But I think I would have really enjoyed playing this had it been around when I was getting onto Facebook. I don't think I ever would have put this down. Unless the content ended up being very, very boring, which I have no clue if it was or not. But whatever reason, the game just did not end up being super popular, and so it didn't really survive that long. 2011 also brought the Sims franchise to mobile with The Sims FreePlay. The Sims FreePlay was actually the very first Sims game that I ever played, and when I first got into it, The Sims 4 was already out, and I was wanting to play The Sims so bad that I was looking for a free alternative, and unfortunately, I learned that The Sims FreePlay was nothing like The Sims 4, and I didn't have the best time with it. I will say, some of the content in the game is actually kind of cool, but the game itself is not my favorite, so it's going in the meh category. I think the thing I hate about it the most, aside from like it's just not very good graphics, is that it has that real-time system where you have to wait like real life amount of time to actually do a task. So I think it's better suited as an idle game because your Sims will be at work for real life hours. And so there's really not much that you can do with your Sims if you're sending them off and making them do tasks. Like, it's just, there's no fast forward button. It's all real time based. And for that, I don't think it is a very good game. Unlike The Sims 1, you can see the whole house in a 360 rotation. It's not like clicking a button and you get shot to a different angle. You can actually see around the entire house. But in order to see the entire house, really, you do have to go into like more of a top-down view, and that's just how I prefer to play it. Now, as of the Sim Summit back in October, they did announce that they were doing some graphic changes in terms of the Sims themselves. So the faces of the Sims are similar to their original style, but not quite. So this is a comparison of what the Sims looked like before and after the update. So before, they were a little bit more pointed, and a lot of the Sims had like very strong features. Whereas afterwards, their faces were a little bit smoother, a little bit more on the round side. And I definitely like the after look better. So I have not played The Sims FreePlay since before the update, so I haven't seen the actual Sims for myself, but I definitely think that the difference between the two is noticeable, and I really am glad that they finally updated the faces because they have looked the same literally since 2011. So, and I absolutely hated the graphics of The Sims. So I'm glad that they kind of fixed it up, made it a little bit smoother. It's still like not great, but it is definitely an improvement. And then moving into the current era of The Sims, we have The Sims 4, which came out in 2014. I definitely think that this is the Sims game that most people are familiar with, just because it is the current Sims game out there. It is the biggest one at the moment, because we are still waiting for Project Renee, which is probably The Sims 5, but that is still years away. We still got some time before The Sims 4 comes to an end. So this is the one everyone knows of right now. And for me personally, I'm putting this in top tier because I have such a strong attachment to this game as my first official main Sims game. Like, I did not grow up on Sims 1, 2, or 3. I started with Sims 4, and I went backwards. So, Sims 4 for me, I have such an attachment to this game. I absolutely love this game. It is my comfort game. And, of course, like I acknowledge that The Sims 3 is a good game, I also acknowledge that The Sims 4 is not a very good game when compared to previous games. But regardless of the quirks that The Sims 4 has, whether it's the content compared to the other games is lacking, or there is still lag and there is still bugs, I love The Sims 4 with all my heart. And I can love a game and still acknowledge that it is not perfect. No game is really going to be perfect. Don't come for me for liking Sims 4 more than Sims 3. Sims 4 was my first Sims game. It is how I got into the franchise. And it was really just a life-changing game for me. So for me, it is top tier because it is really what introduced me to this whole series, and I am forever grateful for it. And also, it is such a different game now than it was when I first got into it. I think I got it in like late 2015, so it had only been out for like a year. So when you think about how much we have now since then, you gotta realize I started off with not a lot of stuff either. So I have gotten to see how the game has changed and gotten to see all of the new content and seen how the game has improved. I love The Sims 4. It is a top tier game for me. Definitely what drew me to The Sims 4 was the way that it looks. I really like this cartoony art style. It's very appealing to me. I don't really know why, but I love the way The Sims look. I love the way that the scenery and the game looks. It's just super fun, and obviously we are lacking in some features from previous games. Like, I know something that people really want in the game that they are mad is not in the game is auto roof, because a lot of us builders really struggle with roofing in The Sims when we're building. But I mean, overall the build mode is kind of superior to the other games. We don't have like creative style or anything, but we do have a lot of freedom with building. A lot of less restrictions. We have some cheats that allow us to do even more with the stuff. I'm talking like the hidden objects, live edit objects. The move objects cheat is a lifesaver. We have the ability to stack windows and put things on half tiles and quarter tiles for flooring. Like, it is so much better than any of the other Sims games when it comes to building. So the lack of auto roof is disappointing, but the build mode overall is really good. We do have some other features like the platforms and also the round walls that are a little bit tricky to maneuver. But also, do we even have round walls in like The Sims 2 or The Sims 3? I'm genuinely not sure. Someone let me know in the comments if we do, because I don't think I've ever seen round walls in either of those games. So yeah. But the Create a Sim is also definitely superior to the other ones because it does have that stretch and pull system. It allows us to truly make unique looking Sims. And overall, I think the customization abilities in this game are just superior, and maybe that's what draws me to this game so much. But overall, this game is just one of the better games in my opinion. Just let me live my life, okay? I know not everyone likes The Sims 4. I really like The Sims 4 though, and let's just leave it at that. 2018 brought us back to the world of mobile games when EA released The Sims Mobile. 7 years after The Sims FreePlay was released, people were still probably wanting to play The Sims on the go, but they wanted an alternative to The Sims FreePlay. Thus, The Sims Mobile was born. And what made this game so much more appealing than The Sims FreePlay was definitely the graphics. They made it look more like The Sims 4, but it still had that real-time system that Sims FreePlay had. I think when I got into The Sims FreePlay, this was definitely more of what I was expecting. I wanted something that was a lot closer to what The Sims 4 was. And while this still is not exactly the same as Sims 4, it is closer to it just because it looks the same. Unfortunately, because the game still has that real-time system, I do have to put this game in the meh category. I just really don't like having that system implemented into the game. I don't like having to wait for several hours to be able to do the next task. I want my Sims to be able to do stuff whenever they feel like it. And I'm not a patient person, really. I don't like waiting. So, in certain situations, when it comes to video games, no, I really don't like things that require me to wait a certain amount of time to progress. So for me, just the mobile games, unfortunately, as good as their content may be, that real-time system really is just a huge turnoff. And I think that really is just kind of the curse of mobile games, and maybe that's why I don't really indulge in them very much. But that is my entire tier list. Every Sims game outside of SimCity ranked. And yeah, I have been recording this for literal hours. I'm happy to be done. This took a lot longer than I thought it was going to. But like I said, we're all entitled to our own opinions. Any games that I have in the top tier category you may think are just meh. Any games in the meh category you may think are top tier, and that's perfectly fine. If you are into these more like ranking type of videos, I have a few videos on my channel where I have ranked some of the Sims 4 DLCs. I've done one over expansions, and I've done one over game packs. So I will link both of those in the description for you if you would like to watch either of them. And with that, I am gonna go. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, subscribe to the channel and make sure you have notifications on so you don't miss anything. Be sure to follow my socials. Links are below. I'll see y'all soon. Bye.